Hi everyone, my name is Isabel McLauchlan. I am a licensed mental health counselor at NOCD. I am licensed in the state of New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And I just want to hop on here because the other day we partnered with Dr. George Sachs over at Inflow, and we were answering some questions on the intersection between ADHD, which is what their expertise is in, and OCD, which is what we treat over here at NOCD. And we just wanted to increase some awareness, clear up any misinformation that might be out there, right? And really kind of talk about how these two can overlap and what that kind of looks like. There are some questions that we didn't get a chance to answer in that partnership, and I wanted to just hop on here and take some time to answer some of those questions. But before I do that, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of information about OCD for anyone who was not part of that call or anyone who is just interested in learning some different things. So the first thing I think it's really important to talk about with OCD is really what it is, right? So it's comprised of these two parts, right? So first we've got the O of OCD, obsessions, and that really is like intrusive thoughts, images, urges, and these are generally distressing. These are generally uncomfortable, right? And so, of course, in response to that, there are these compulsions that we do, right? And those are really some behaviors, some things that we do to try to neutralize fears, right? And OCD really tells you that it would be your fault if you don't take control and if you don't do some of these behaviors, right? Here at NOCD, we specialize in OCD treatment, and that specific treatment is exposure and response prevention, ERP. And response prevention is really a very important part of that, which is to gradually work on reducing and stopping those compulsions, as well as like sitting in some of the uncertainty and some of the discomfort that comes up with those intrusive thoughts. And it's really shown to be the most effective way of treating OCD. So it's a really great resource. There's a lot more information on our YouTube channel, the NoCD YouTube channel. There's a Get to Know OCD podcast that our Dr. McGrath hosts. So there's plenty of information that we provide when it comes to OCD. So if this is not the specific niche that you're looking into, the intersection of OCD and ADHD, we have a lot of other information and a lot of other content that you should definitely check out. The other thing is if you're looking for some more specific information for yourself, if you're wanting some help, if some of these questions, some of those things that I talk about today kind of make you feel like, oh, let me kind of see if this is something that I want to work on. I would definitely recommend you go to NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. That is our website. You can book a free 15-minute phone call with someone there just to kind of see if it's something you'd be interested in, if it's something that you want to work on. So we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of information available to you, but without further ado, let me give you some of that information right now. Let's jump right into some of the questions. So the first question that we didn't get a chance to get to during the event was a question from someone who was really struggling with burnout. They had mentioned that they wake up thinking about certain work assignments, and they feel concerned about are they completely done? They feel like maybe they're not good enough. And then they start engaging in some compulsions, it seems like. So some avoidance, some reassurance seeking, right? So it seems like they're kind of like looking for some information on just what to do in this situation when someone is struggling with burnout, right? And what I would say is you're probably struggling with burnout because of all of the extra things that OCD is asking you to do, right? So all of the avoidance, all of the reassurance seeking, all of probably the checking and rechecking of your work, right? That's all going to be extremely exhausting because OCD is making you do a lot more work than what you would traditionally have to do if you were just doing these assignments, right? So even though ERP can be a lot of work, what I would say is if you front load some of that work, if you come and you start doing the treatment, start doing the work, it might be a little bit stressful initially because you're adding a little bit more to your plate, but the goal is really to take more off of your plate, right? It's kind of like you're strengthening some muscles, and right now your muscles are very weak in this category, right, or in this area. And by strengthening those muscles, it's difficult initially, but you'll be able to carry a lot more and do a lot more long term. So hopefully that would be helpful for you. The next question is someone asking how you support a small child. They say specifically with ADHD, they say someone who's struggling with issues like not having things the way that they've expected, and marked biting themselves in response to the disappointment. So I would definitely say, as far as like the intersection between ADHD and OCD, it's kind of hard to tell just from the question alone if this person or if this kiddo has OCD. So I would say definitely like just coming in and getting assessed, seeing if that might be something that the kiddo is dealing with, right? Because not having things go the way that you expected does sound like a little bit of that like control aspect, and OCD definitely wants us to try to get control over everything that we don't have control over. So coming in, seeing if that's something that could also be impacting them other than just the ADHD. And if it does end up being just ADHD, right, then we can do some care coordination. We can do some referrals to make sure that the kiddo is getting the treatment for the ADHD. But if it is OCD, then we can work with them on some of those control aspects and trying to sit in the uncertainty and not have to have control over everything, right? As well as trying to decrease some of those negative behaviors like biting yourself or some of those like harming behaviors, because I'm sure that that's not a fun response for them either. And so being able to decrease some of those things would be great too. The next question says, I have an issue with trusting myself. For example, sending an invoice which requires trusting yourself. What can you help to suggest helping to start trusting myself a little bit more? So that's something I think most people who come to OCD treatment, who come to NOCD to work with us, have asked me, honestly, how do you start trusting yourself? And I think it's a very interesting question, because I think the most obvious answer for it is also one of just the hardest things to do. And that's why the work that we do is very like gradual, very building. And it's really just, you have to trust yourself, right? You just have to put yourself out there. You have to start doing things. You have to like decrease some of that avoidance, and eventually you will trust yourself. I can think of some particular occasions with some of my clients where they were just like, no, I can't do this. Like, I know that I can't do it. It's too hard, right? And I really like to take that word can't out of our vocabulary, especially when we're talking about fears, right? Because it's not that you can't do something very oftentimes. It's more so just that it sounds very uncomfortable and it's very hard to do something. So what we like to frame it as instead is like, I'm choosing not to do something, at least in the beginning, so that we can put that choice back into the equation, right? So when you're saying, how can I trust myself, right? Right now I'm choosing not to trust myself, and then very gradually we'll get to the place of like, okay, I'm going to choose to trust myself. It might suck, whatever this thing is that I'm scared of happening, right? It might suck if I send an invoice out and it's wrong, or someone comes back to me and is upset with the work that I did, right? But maybe we can send it out anyway, and maybe we can trust ourselves that like in the future, not only did we maybe get things correctly on the invoice, right? But maybe we didn't get things correct on the invoice, and we can trust ourselves to handle situations that are hard with people who maybe are upset with us after that, right? Because trusting ourselves also involves trusting ourselves when we make mistakes to be able to handle those mistakes. Although I know that is much easier said than done for sure. Alrighty. The next question, which is the last question from the events that we didn't get a chance to answer, comes from someone who is diagnosed with both OCD and ADHD. They said, I get stuck sometimes on whether my RSD type feelings, so that's rejection sensitivity dysphoria, are related to OCD or ADHD. An amazing question or statement, right? They said, my guess is it doesn't actually matter, and my OCD is telling me I need a definitive answer. So, I mean, yeah, honestly, you've hit it right on the nose. If anything, maybe this person is seeking a little bit of reassurance that it's not something that they can answer, not something that they can solve. So to that person, absolutely, I would say try to sit in the uncertainty about where the rejection sensitivity dysphoria comes from. Maybe it's OCD, maybe it's ADHD, right? Maybe it's both of those. Maybe sometimes it's OCD, maybe sometimes it's ADHD, right? And for anyone out there who is thinking about this for the first time, I would give you the assurance of, yeah, absolutely. Rejection sensitivity can be a huge part of both OCD and ADHD. And so it's going to be hard for you at home to say, oh, okay, I have some of that rejection sensitivity. I must have OCD. Or, oh, okay, I have that rejection sensitivity. I must have ADHD. And that's why, although some of these informational videos are really, really helpful for really trying to figure out what's going on and like what kind of support you might need, really the best thing that you can do is talk to a licensed professional. And I think there's a lot of resources out there. There's definitely a lot of resources that we have for you to be able to talk to someone and see what might be going on so that you can start getting the help that you need and also the help that you deserve. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.